Hey, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of A Nanny's Life podcast. Thank you so much for being here. This week is probably going to be one of y'all's favorites this year so far for a lot of reasons. Number one, I have been on here talking by myself for a couple of months, and I appreciate y'all listening, but today we have a guest. We got a friend in the building. This is one of my favorite nannies, first of all. Social media, we haven't met in real life yet, but I feel like we are friends in real life. So I claim her as my friend. I've been following her since she was the Norman nanny, where she was like posting these bomb lunches every day. And my nanny kids were eating mac and cheese. So y'all please welcome my friend Alyssa to the party. Hey, friend.
Hey, everybody. I'm so happy and so excited to be back on the podcast. I had so much fun the first time. And honestly, my mom has been like, so when are you going to talk to Amber again? When are you going to be back on the, have you, do you have any ideas of when you're going to be back on the podcast? So my mother has also been waiting for,
Love
loves you. You are her favorite. And I think even me included. She is always talking to me about your content and always asking me about you. And yes, so when I make it, they're also on the East Coast. They're in North Carolina. We have family in Atlanta. And so the plan, we will link. And
We
my
will.
also want to come. So maybe it'll be a whole mother-daughter.
Let's do it. My
I know you're
gosh.
close with your mom. And
Yes, we
yes.
should do that. That would be, oh my, I already got it. You let me know when.
Yes.
I got you. That'll be a blast. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And thank you, of course, for coming back to chat with me. You just had a big life change. You and your husband bought a home. Y'all are
Yes.
homeowners now, which
First
is
time homeowners.
such a big deal. I know people like to downplay it these days for whatever reason, but it is important. It is major for anyone, first of all,
Yeah.
because this economy does not make it easy.
Yeah, for sure.
But more importantly, as Black women who work as domestic workers,
Mhm.
some people believe that this is not a thing we could ever achieve, that we could ever seek to achieve. But you've done it, I've done it. And so today we're going to talk through sort of the process and what it looked like for us as nannies and as Black women in America. I was just telling Alyssa, I've been in my home for almost 5 years, which I cannot believe. I was so lucky, y'all, so lucky to close on this house 2 weeks before the world shut down. 2 weeks before everything changed. So I'm definitely enjoying having a place to call home, but it has come with a bit of a learning curve.
For sure. Yeah.
So I want to ask you first off, before we get into the full homeownership talk, I got a message this week about nanny relationships with their bosses. And in particular, a nanny was asking how to go into a job, navigating the friendship aspect with their boss, and just, I guess some of us have PTSD in terms of difficult
And some of us.
experiences. Yeah.
Some of us. Okay.
Yeah, we've had experiences with bosses where we either thought we had a good, close relationship and didn't, or couldn't really find our groove. So I just want to ask you, how do you advise nannies to go into navigating the relationship with your boss and maybe allowing a friendship to develop?
So I will start by saying, I think we kind of touched on this last time that we were on the podcast and how my even coming across my nanny family started. I found her on Instagram. I found my mom boss on Instagram. She's a content creator, and I really liked the content that she was putting out. At that time in my life, mental health was really important to me, and she was going through some postpartum anxiety. So I recognized that I like this human. I like the content that she puts out and what I think our values aligned. So having that was one thing. And then we were similar in age. I'm actually a couple years older. And so that's the first time that scenario has ever happened. And I think now getting into my 30s and being of that age where my peers are having children, that's more likely to happen. Whereas before, when I was in my early 20s, there was, up to a 20+ year age gap before. So it wouldn't have made sense to have friendship. So it was new navigating that dynamic in the first place. And it's still new for me to say. So I don't know all of the answers and I can only speak on my experience, but ultimately it was a healing experience. It helped me heal some of the trauma that I didn't realize that I even had. So I guess the best advice that I would give is being open to having some friendships with the boss. And that's kind of the first place to start, is that realizing, I think that sometimes because of the power differential that we have with our bosses, we maybe even put them on a pedestal or just don't see them as our peers, or just as someone that we could possibly be friends with, or we maybe wouldn't bump into each other, the crowd, we wouldn't go to the same places.
Right.
Would we ever be friends if we knew each other in a different place? So maybe that's one thing to kind of, one area to start with, is that when I examined this human who happened to be my boss, I think I would be friends with you
Mm-hmm.
in a different scenario. So that was the first part, was just, I think we vibe. I think we get along. And mom bosses also work from home. And so the friendship happened really naturally. And so, yeah, that, and then putting in the effort once the trust was established, then, being a little bit vulnerable and just kind of showing up and being friendly and step by step. So it has taken time for us to become friends. We we went out together for Christmas. We've met up for coffees. We've had dinner, my husband and her husband and I. And I was like, oh, babe, this is kind of like, I went to your work party. This is kind of my work party. They had us over for dinner. And so it's been a really cool friendship, and one that I'm thankful that I have, and one that I'm thankful that I opened myself up to, and truly healing of some other relationship dynamics. One example is my mom boss, she'll call me randomly and it'll have something absolutely not to do with work. But I remember initially there was a time where she called on a Saturday and invited me to coffee, and how much of a trigger that was for me, because
Yeah.
I've never gotten that kind of phone call before from a boss. And I was like, I'm fired. She figured out something I didn't even know I did wrong, because that was kind of the relationship that I had, that if somebody was calling me or
Mm-hmm.
wanted to have coffee, that it
Right.
was never good. And so it took some time of learning her character and the dynamics, and having to remind myself, like, okay, I'm not in the same situation. So I would advise anybody who sees the opportunity there, definitely, I wouldn't say throw caution to the wind, because always trust your gut. If you're kind of, feel out the vibes. But if you think it's a trustworthy person, you think you guys would get along outside of this situation, take advantage of having friendship, because parenthood is really hard. Nannyhood is hard. Life is hard. Being a human alive right now is hard. It's lonely. It's isolating. And if you have the opportunity to have a friend, and somebody is choosing to desires to show up for you, go for it and kind of treat it like making any other friend. It's awkward and it's difficult, but it's worth it in the end. And so, yeah, my mom, boss, and I, we are good friends. We've spent time together outside of work, and it has made our work dynamic better in ways that I was afraid, like, oh, we're not going to have boundaries, or I'm going to know too much. It's actually made it easier to have tough conversations, because we know each other better and we know how to communicate better. And so there have been some times where we maybe have said things that each other didn't want to hear. We've had to have hard conversations about work. But I think having the friendship side to lean on made that easier, because I know you value me as a human. There have even been times to, we've said, let's pause and repick this up. I feel like maybe emotions getting into this, or, okay, I can see that this maybe isn't going well. We were having hard conversations before. And yeah.
Yeah. I think you made a really excellent point about age,
Mhm.
because when we first start nannying, we're children, and
Right.
families see us as children. As
That's children.
much as they're like, sure, I hired a professional nanny. If we're 10 years younger, they're like, she's a kid. So they
Yes.
don't see us as intellectual human beings, and they don't see us as peers. And it's so true. The older we get, the younger the parents get.
Yes.
Because this is my first younger than me bosses as well.
Yeah.
And it's just a different vibe.
It completely is a different vibe. And it's interesting. Well, I'm curious if this is similar to you, but I feel like the respect is a little bit different. And I think that some of it really has to do with age, more so than the differential of people, and just kind of seeing us as equals. It's kind of helped level some of the power.
Absolutely. Especially when you're working for like Southern or Midwestern, like families that are raised on respect in
Hmm.
general. Like you're getting
Hmm.
the ma'ams and my clients are
Hmm.
like, Miss Amber. And I'm like,
Yes.
she doesn't have to call me Miss, but I
Right.
appreciate the
Right.
respect. Like,
Right.
for sure, the respect hits different. And it really is mutual as well, because the
Hmm.
older we get, the more our peers are having children. And it's like, how would I have this conversation with my best friend about her child?
Right.
Now I have so much more empathy and I'm giving so much more
Yes.
grace and I'm actually considering the other side. Whereas
That
when it's just a boss, it's like
that
sometimes,
part.
yeah, sometimes we are as inconsiderate of the humanity of our bosses as we feel like they are of us, but we
Okay.
don't realize it because
Thank
we
you for
expect them to
saying
be
that.
better. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that because it does absolutely go both ways. And
Hmm.
yeah, I didn't realize that, but it's true. It has been easier for me to humanize my peer as well and kind of what they're going through versus some, the story that I've told myself about what it means to be a boss and what it means to my boss and what it means to be an employer. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
perspective.
And bringing it on back into today's topic, the home ownership of it all has really taught me to extend grace because home ownership is hard.
It is.
It's not as easy to maintain a home as we think it is for these people who outsource help to maintain their home. So that has definitely changed my perspective on families in a way. I want to ask you, Alyssa, what made you want to be a homeowner? Some people are just like, I need the amenities, I need the valet, I don't
Right.
want to do maintenance. What made you choose home ownership?
Ooh, that's a good question. What made me choose home ownership? I think it was something I have always wanted and seen a value in. And it felt like it was time. I think my husband and I, we both matured and we realized we really wanted to dig in some roots and something that felt like our own. And I realized how limiting it had been in my life. And again, it's not like this for everyone, but for me personally, the amount of things that I said, well, like, oh, I would change this, but I'm just renting, so I won't. Or, oh, I really wish that I had this very achievable thing. I wish I had this, but I'm just renting, so I won't. And so I saw not having home ownership, I saw the way that it started to affect the things that I wanted for myself and how I was using this as kind of a way to stay small or to not achieve some of my dreams and to limit myself. And there was a narrative, like you said, there's a lot of people that think that Black women can't do this, Black domestic workers can't do this. I kind of was one of those people, and it was something that I wanted, but it felt so far off for myself. And then I realized how limiting that was, or the things that I wasn't doing, or how it allowed me to stay small, thinking that this was something that I could not achieve for myself, or my husband and I, that we couldn't achieve for our family. A place where I saw myself comparing myself to the Joneses and just letting myself almost be a victim to something that was a challenge versus rising up and saying, okay, how do I get what I want? How do I take ownership over my life in this area? How do I make this happen for myself?
I think that's so dope. I love your motivation. Oh my goodness. It is a thing where you feel like grown-ups do that, and I'm still
Yes. And
17.
I'm right. And I am not that kind of grown up, or I'm not that kind of,
Yeah. Yeah, they raised my rent one time too many. And I said, this we not no, because I'm just giving you the money every month and I get nothing back at any point. Like I need a house and I need a yard. Luckily, Blue Collar McGee over here, he'll fix anything. So that was a big key, honestly, was who I bought the home with.
same. Yes, same. And we need to touch on that. Who I bought the home with has a lot to do with that.
Absolutely. Being capable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just really quickly, it's still Black History Month, and y'all have been very quiet in the industry, very quiet. But I just want to drop some stats just so that we understand how big this is for
Mhm.
Black women owning homes. First of all, okay, no, let me just stick to the script.
Okay.
In 1968, that is when the Fair Housing Act was passed, which outlawed housing discrimination based on race, color, religion, and national origin. In the 60s, companies could deny you buying a home simply because of what you look like.
So in the year 2024, there were some laws in a specific town in Oklahoma that they were just getting that had the mayor just last year removed, saying that anyone of African descent could never own any land or property in such and such neighborhood. Something that I'm sure people didn't, well, I'm not sure actually that
Right.
people didn't didn't uphold that. And it was something that I was surprised, but also not surprised to find out. And so yeah, this was still in laws that maybe people didn't realize were there. And it was hush,
Somebody knew.
but somebody knew, somebody
Hmm.
chose to write that. And yes, and that the mayor in just last year
In
was
2024.
in 2024 got the verbiage. And so even if it wasn't something that was upheld, it was still in the law and could be upheld.
Right.
Somebody
Right. Depending on
chose
your
to.
judge. Absolutely. And like you're saying, like this is still an issue today. In 2022, 45% of black households owned homes compared to 75% of white households. So it's not even really getting better. And if we think back to our history, y'all saw the Super Bowl performance by Mr. Kendrick Lamar, where he was talking about the revolution being televised. When you heard Kendrick said 40 acres and a mule, referring to what was promised to former slaves when slavery ended. We never got that.
Yeah.
But the Homestead Act granting acres on acres to families to go out into the Midwest and live there, that happened.
Yeah. The land run. I live in Oklahoma. Um,
Yeah.
and so the benefits of people that they wanted people to live here in Oklahoma. And so it was like, if you go out there and you can stake claim to this land, then it is yours. It is here. And so just the history of people that are still benefiting from getting acres upon acres of land for just saying that it is yours was not the same opportunity for people of color.
Right. And right now, black home ownership rates are lower than they were in 2000. And the home ownership gap between black families and white families is wider today than it was when segregation was legal.
Wow.
So it's important to have something. Like some families cannot even conceptualize elders passing and not having anything to give them, whether it's property, whether it's money, but it's the way that the system goes. So home ownership is important
Yes.
and it is accessible, it is doable, it is hard, but you deserve it if it's something that you want. So
Yes.
for you guys,
Mhm.
Alyssa, what were you looking for in a home? Did you have a short list of like must-haves?
Yes. Okay. So I'll start with saying one of the things that kind of made this process take as long as it did was the limiting belief that I could not afford or that we could not afford the house that I would want. So it wasn't worth looking
Mm,
because it's still expensive, even if it's not what you want. So I'm not going to spend all this money to not have what I want. And so that was kind of a limiting belief that I'd had for a really long time that held me back. And then I was kind of challenged to really what is it, what that you want, get really clear on what it is that you're looking for. And so for me, having a yard was really important to me. I spend as much time as I possibly can outside. I say that I am solar powered. I like to be outside I like to be outside. And so having a comfortable space to do that, having some curb appeal meant a lot to me. Being raised on the East Coast and then moving to the Midwest, the houses look different here. And so and maybe it wasn't the style that I was used to. So there were a lot of houses that I just from the looking on the outside wasn't a big fan of. So I wanted something that to me had a little bit of curb appeal. And then for hubby, a big thing for him was wanting something that he did not have to do any work to. He is not that he is not incapable. It is just not his desire to have to do any manual labor. So a fixer upper was not an option. And that was hard because I don't love a lot of the new builds that we had looked at. And so I wanted something that was kind of in an established neighborhood that had established trees, that had some character. So that was my biggest thing, something that had some trees, that felt like it had some character, had curb appeal that I liked. And then for hubby, it was, no, I don't want to have to do any work to this. I want it to be move-in ready. So those were some of our big things. That
That's smart. The whole move-in ready. It's very smart. Very smart. We don't have a fixer upper, but our yard is a fixer upper. The process is a little slow going when you insist on doing it yourself, but that's not me complaining or anything. The sun still shines out there, so we still go out there. And I also feel like when you work in homes as a
hmm
profession, I
hmm
feel like we're a lot more picky and
Yes.
a lot more like particular about things because
Yeah.
we understand the look of things, but we also better understand, I feel like, the function of spaces
Exactly.
and stuff.
Yes.
You know, like we spend our days organizing and making things
Absolutely.
work well. So we want a space that is going to provide that for us. And also, a big thing for me, especially in this Atlanta market, was location.
Yes.
I feel like the older I get, the less I'm willing to commute to work. It's just, I don't want to do it. I don't want to be in traffic. I don't want to be stressed going into work during the day. So it was important to find a neighborhood that was affordable to me
hmm
and welcoming to me,
Yep.
but
That
super
part.
proximal to the places where nannies are widely employed because I still got to go to work. And that in itself, I feel like was a challenge for me. Was it challenging for you or?
Yes and no. I was willing to be a little bit more flexible on my commute only because I know that nanny life doesn't always have the same longevity as some other jobs. And so I knew I wanted to be within my home for longer for what my outage children.
Right.
So I wasn't going to tie myself to a job that may change and have some flexibility, but also wanting to be in an area, like you said, that is close enough to where people might want nannies. So
Mhm.
it was important for us to be in Oklahoma City proper versus maybe one of the like subdivisions that was kind of further out or the newer neighborhoods and that kind of thing. So yes, it was really important to me. And also it was very important to hubby. And he does plan on being at his job longer than I, maybe will be with mine, with my specific family. And so it was a big deal for him. Could have
Location.
location wise
Yeah.
for those same reasons. And where we had been renting for a long time, we go opposite of traffic. So he's equally appreciated that of like, not only is the commute not too bad, I'm going the opposite of traffic. I'm not stuck in rush hour. So it was that was very important to him.
That makes sense. This man over here, he drives
Yeah.
every day. His workday starts at 6 a.m.
Okay.
So he's not in
In
traffic
the
in the
traffic in the
morning.
same way. Right.
And also he similar to me, like our jobs could be in different places. Like he works contracts. So being in the city, like you said, proper guarantees that you're not going to be so far away from a
Or
job site. Whereas if you choose to live outside the city and you end up at a job that's outside the city in the opposite
in the opposite.
direct, like some of his coworkers drive like an hour and a half in no
Right.
traffic to work, which is
Yes. So being central was important to me. So if I could get where I need to go. And yeah.
I also feel like it was important to me because at the time at my old job, I had gotten to the point where those kids would come to my house sometimes or like if I had appointments at my house, I didn't have to take off work necessarily if it worked with their schedule. So being able to pop over to my house
Then,
and
yes.
pop back was like big because and we'll get into this in a little bit, but it's very time consuming
Yeah.
purchasing a home
Yeah.
and subsequently owning the home and maintaining the home can also be very time consuming. So I location was very probably my first step was figuring out like which neighborhoods I wanted to live
hmm
in. Did you guys pick a neighborhood before you did your prequal or did you get with the bank first? What was your process
We,
like?
so our process was long and short, I would say. So it initially had kind of started with, oh, we might be considering this. So this would have been in 2023. We had neighbors that lived across the street that owned their house. We really liked their house and we liked the area that we were living in. They were wanting to move. He was a very
Mm.
excited neighbor, was like, okay, we're moving. You should buy our house. Blah, blah, blah. And we're like, I mean, we were interested. Okay, we haven't talked to a lender. We haven't talked. And so, and then he was like, oh, we have a great lender. I'll link you up. And then put my husband and the lender in a text message that afternoon. And so we took the meeting of like, well, we know we want to, move forward with,
Yeah.
well, this is the first step. So again, it was unconventional, but that was the first conversation that we had. It helped us realize, one, that we were not where we needed to be to purchase what we wanted, but we were a lot closer than we thought we were. And so that conversation was like, okay, so it's like, this is doable. Yes, it's hard work, but it's possible. And so that was a really game changer scenario. But we realized that, and because we were renting, and with rents, you have leases. And so you kind of are looking in years at a time.
Yeah.
Do we re-sign or do we not? So it was like, okay, I think we could do this by the signing of next lease. So what do we do to get ourselves there? So it started really quickly and then planted a seed that kind of took some time. And by the next year, we started looking in specific neighborhoods and new areas that were yeses and nos, and looked at the market and what was on the table really specifically, that next year.
So did you have a budget based on that first experience, or were you adjusting it kind of as you were looking?
Both. We had a budget based on that first experience. And then even within a year, inflation and house prices went crazy, even within
Crazy.
a year. And then realizing and accepting, look, what we want costs this much money. We need to figure out how we make that work. Because I think ultimately my thing was, it's too expensive to buy something that just isn't it.
Mhm.
And then, and we're both Jesus girlies over here. So part of it was really tied to my faith. It Our church was going through a sermon series that was more, and it was talking about how God's able to do more than you could imagine, request, or guess in your wildest dreams, the Ephesians 3:20 verse. And then so that becoming my truth of God saying, trust me for more. And so there was originally a house that we saw, because I was also really discouraged. There wasn't a lot that fit in that initial budget that we had looked at that we could find that we liked. And there wasn't a ton of houses. There just weren't options. So feeling really stuck. And then there was a house, we happened to just kind of be taking a leisurely way home at a night out together, and just happened to see a for sale sign. And I was like, this house is cute. Let's see it. And we have contacted a realtor that we'd kind of been in touch with, and I prayed on it, because looked at the price of the house and was like, oh, this is out of our budget, blah, blah, blah. But prayed on it, and I felt like God saying, it's really important to see the house. I'm not saying that this is your house. I'm not promising you this, but it's important for you to see this house. And so we did. We honored that, and we were like, let's see the house. And that was a game changer, because it forced us to have the conversation of, okay, there are houses out there that we like, and I think this is what they cost. We're going to have to raise our budget. We're going to have to figure out what that looks like. And again, it was a really big faith journey that was also met with, and not to say that God miraculously like provided more money or XE, but opportunities to see that there was more available than we had realized. There was just education that we did not have of options and what the home buying process really was like. And so once we got started, kind of took that leap of faith, and then trusted, again, not to kind of take off some of those limiting beliefs while still being good stewards and responsible people and not getting yourself into debt. But just when you raise the bar a little bit higher, believing that you can match it. And so that was a big part of it. And so then, yes, we did have to adjust the budget. But
Mhm.
it was in the long term of when it came to month, the thousands on the end of the big number was 20, 30, $50 more on the month to month, and a little bit of like,
Right.
this thing that feels crazy and undoable, when you break it down, it is very possible.
And that's when you start to realize that, like, you could maybe live without Netflix for 12 months, or like
Because that's the
Instacart,
difference.
or yeah, it's the conveniences that we pay a pretty penny, like a premium for, if you get rid of them, even for a short period of time, you start to see that a little bit adds up and it makes a big difference. And when it comes to securing a home and ultimately your future, because this is an investment.
What's that?
It is my home, but this is a safety net, a backup plan. It can be a lot for you in the long run that, if you don't take the risk, then you're just not even
Yeah.
opening yourself up to the possibility. So I love that you learned a lot in the process. I think I thought I knew a lot because my mom is in housing
Mhm.
and she was a realtor for years, but I made the decision when we first decided to start looking that I was going to be a big girl and I was going to do it without my mom.
Yeah.
So I did end up learning a lot.
A lot.
And I love that you found your house because I found my house too.
I was gonna say it wasn't that house, and actually, Aaron did. My husband, he did find the one that we were in.
Okay.
That house didn't end up being the house, but it was the catalyst of what led us here in that
Well,
journey.
because my journey, I tried to do the realtor route
Hmm.
and it didn't work for me. So the Atlanta housing market is a really weird thing.
Hmm.
Okay. Because where I live versus 3 miles is a whole different world. And then
Yeah.
3 more miles is a third world. I was very specific about my location needs, about the space we needed, about the yard I wanted, and the budget was not a big budget, and I wasn't about to make it bigger. When we looked for this house, the man that I stay with had not yet graduated from his program.
Hmm.
So we were intentionally buying a house where we were at that capacity, knowing that we expected elevation
Yeah.
financially and in our work positions because I didn't want to be house poor. I'm very much a Capricorn girly. Where is the money? So in our process, when I was reaching out to realtors, a lot of what I got back was you just need more money.
Yeah.
Period. Full stop.
Ooh.
And I was
Okay.
like, no,
No.
there's a way we can figure this out. And so I was like on Zillow every day. I was riding through neighborhoods just to see what vibes I was getting because I was like, there's no way you're telling me that I cannot afford one house in all of
Right.
Atlanta proper. There's no
Thank
way.
you. Yes. Yes. That headstrong, and just knowing that and having that, like, yes, I can. Actually, yes, I can.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that a life lesson that my mom taught me young, or that helped the way that my brain processed, is that money is a figure outable problem. But if you don't have, but having a realtor that can agree with that, of like, we can figure that out. So even if the money doesn't move, it is still a figure outable thing. We can find what I'm looking for in this budget. Are
Mm-hmm.
you willing to do what it takes to get there? And so not letting that be a limiting factor of like, oh, well, you cannot find what you're looking for in this budget. So you just need more money. And that's the only option. It's like, no, sir, ma'am. No.
And it ultimately comes down to how much money they're looking to make. I realized I realized they were like the commission on your little house is not
What is
significant.
free? Yeah.
So I don't want to do the work, which is fine, whatever. I'll give it to a newbie. But I was not about to be bullied into a bigger house or a different neighborhood or anything that wasn't what I wanted because, again, we're nannies.
Yeah.
Things change, life changes, and I did not want to buy a house and then feel like I could not leave my job
Right.
if I needed to leave my job or take time off or whatever. So yeah, I didn't have a great realtor experience, but I found my house and that's all that mattered to me. So now the process of going under contract,
Yeah.
because that was a prison of its own. And I didn't realize how you have to just freeze and not do anything. You can't spend no money. You can't it's a really weird time. I don't know. And it wasn't fully explained to me. Like I found my
Mhm.
house and the realtor that we had, which cuz you do technically need a realtor to do the process, but the one who we found was like, "Do you want to put in an offer?" And I was like, "Yes." And I didn't realize like
What?
the second they accept the offer, like you're locked down.
Yeah.
until we see this thing through. Did you realize going into it how limited you were going to be?
No, no, it's the ultimate. And I'll say, on top of that, even not just the being in contract part, I didn't realize how much actively looking for a house and being ready to purchase. There was times where I was just like, I'm rushing home from work early for a showing. I'm doing this. Our whole life, all of our conversations for a minute were about housing stuff. There was a time
Hmm.
where I was like, I love you, but if you send me another house, I will block your number. Like to my husband, like
It becomes your whole
I
personality.
will block your contact if you send me another. I cannot, And so
Yeah.
that was even just how locked down I felt before the contract, before any of that of like, okay, well, this takes priority because you have to move fast. So how fast paced everything moved was really different.
Right.
There was a house that we thought that we liked, but because of the person was selling their house, the house that they wanted to, they had to sell their house by this day. And so there was an opportunity where we had thought we had found the one and we put an offer in. We thought that they were going to accept it just for the rug to be pulled out last minute. And so just how emotional that part was, because you are so, yes, financially invested, but emotionally invested. And then again, church girlies over here, spiritually invested, because I was like, what are you doing, God? I'm trying to trust you. You told me to trust
Hmm.
you.
Hmm.
What's happening? So it was a whirlwind, all of that. And to say, we also signed our contract and went under contract we did a quick close. That was an offer that we had offered that to hopefully get our house and look attractive, I guess, to the sellers. And yeah, you're locked in. We ended up having to sign for our closing remotely because we were going to be out of town and just linking up things. So they sent a notary. We were visiting my parents. They sent a notary to my mom and dad's house. My dad
Wow.
was back there with the camera, like, so I was bringing the guy coffee and tea. It was just,
My
it
goodness.
was extremely stressful for us because we were trying to get it to happen before we went out of town. It was really discouraging when it didn't happen, but altogether it ended up being a sweet thing. But even that service existing, that we were in a completely different state,
Hmm.
and so just the process of it was overwhelming for somebody who kind of moves a little bit slower, and so have to completely yield to the process.
I feel like the hardest part for us, like, so you first go under contract, and at that point, they want some consistency in your financials,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. So your credit score,
Mm-hmm.
your savings account, anything
All of
you
your business,
declared, like everything, they
any
want you to
business.
just eat noodles and sit on your hands and wait, basically. That part would have navigated a little bit differently, but we're good at being frugal. So,
Yeah.
we got through it. I think the hardest thing for us was the underwriting process.
Mm-hmm.
We went with a big lender. And for us, anyway, it was like you handed over your paperwork and then you heard nothing back for like however long. And then they would randomly call you at like 9 a.m. and be like, I need proof of this.
Immediately, right
And
now.
you're at work, like, I don't have a printer. I don't have a scanner. I don't have how do I do this? Or they'll be like, we need to talk. Can you talk now? And I'm like, I'm actually bathing 3 children. So
Right.
no, I cannot. So just first of all, you have to be open with your bosses
Yes.
about the fact that you're going through the process
Yeah.
because you will get pulled away and you will need some grace.
Yes.
Um, and also for me, I don't know if this happened for you because at the time I was the breadwinner. I don't ever want to be that again, but I was at the time. And so I was like the first name and the first occupation on the application. They were very stressed
Yeah.
that I wrote Nanny. They were like,
Yeah.
so
So
how do you get paid? And I was like, what do you mean?
you,
Direct deposit. And so I almost found myself advocating for my career as I'm buying a home because a lot of things they wanted to automatically invalidate
hmm
because of my career. But I was like, now, if I have the W-2s and I have the proof of income and I have signed statements from my bosses, I don't understand.
what is,
So that was a thing. And I had to give them a little razzle dazzle
yeah.
on that because they were slowing down the process for absolutely no reason. So maybe be prepared for that. I don't know. What was your experience like?
I am not the breadwinner. So
I'm not no more either.
I'm not the breadwinner. Yes, I'm not. And so mine, it was similar, but I felt like they felt like they were worth. were within their right to kind of erase me from the process because my name was not the first name. And it really did mess with me. That was one of the things I was going to bring up, was being kind of removed and then almost chosenly removed of like, oh, this doesn't look as good or fluff, or this isn't as attractive or this kind of thing. It really did. I did struggle confidence wise for a little bit. And there are certain processes where I had to do work to feel like I bought a house and that I am a homeowner, and had to actively remind myself of the value that I brought to this process. And that part was hard for me of not being the provider, not being the number one person. And again, within the nanny, the stuff that people want to raise, the discrediting, it was kind of like, oh, that's cute. Okay, so,
Right.
and especially nanny part-time. So even on top of that, like,
Yeah.
that's cute that you bring in some fluff money or your little spending money. Like, no, it goes in the account the same way, baby. Like, this isn't just my little side thing
Right.
you to keep me, so there was a lot of more of that energy. And so the lack of respect was the same. And that kind of that you experienced, and then a different angle of it, of not being the breadwinner. So that part was emotionally hard. And again, people like, okay, so do you have this? It's like, yes, I do. Why would I not? Or
Why
like,
wouldn't I?
do you have paste it? Do you have, So I would say for a nanny, like you said, be prepared for that, and then be prepared to have your
Be
ducks in a row,
ready.
your
Yeah.
affairs in order, because yeah, these people want to know every dollar, penny, cent, those things. So
Every single thing. And then, like, they couldn't, because Rudy works on a construction site, you can't call him during the day.
yeah,
So my phone was on fire, like every second, to the point where I had to tell my bosses, I'm so sorry. I turned on the TV for 15 minutes
yeah,
because they said if we didn't talk about it today, there's a lot of that too. A lot of, some people call it fear mongering, but they'll say, like, if you don't do this right now,
right now,
nothing's going to work
nothing.
out. Everything's going
Yes,
to be canceled.
your life is over. Actually,
And after the fact, you
never own a
learn,
home,
yeah, never.
ever,
But after
ever.
the fact, they're like, happens every time. And I'm like,
Right? That part of the fear mongering, and so just the power differential. And I think people talking in realtor terms or in home buyer terms, or intentionally kind of speaking over your head or doing
mm-hmm,
little, so we were thankful we had a really great realtor experience, one that made me respect the profession a lot more, to see what all goes into being good. Because I kind of thought, like, what do they do? What do you do? I can find this house.
right.
We could even find, the houses ourselves. And so just realizing the different layers of the ways that we were advocated for. And then even having somebody that we trusted, at least their recommendation, the people that they worked with, that part was really helpful, having that trust. And so we did have a really good experience in ways that made it easier for us, and just kind of had that peace, because it's scary. There's just a lot of things that you're not privy to, and there's so much information that you would never know until you're going through it.
Yeah, like not realizing you don't have to buy the house. Like if you haven't closed, you can walk, you don't have to do this. Like you're not, like going under contract is not as big as it feels, but they make it feel like you have to do this. But
Yes.
then at the same time, you're slowly learning about all these different inspections
Hmm.
and all these different specifications for the home in terms of how old the air can be, like the
Yeah.
HVAC system, how old
Yes.
that can be, how new the electronics have to be, how functional things have to be. Like you're just overloaded with all this information that means nothing to you, really. But you have to figure out how to synthesize it and decide if you're going to accept the terms or not. The house we bought was renovated.
Same here. Yeah.
So a lot of it is like the work was done, but was it done well
Was it
enough?
done well?
Do we feel safe? And are we just going to
Yes.
have to pay for everything in 2 days?
Yes. That part was nerve wracking for us as well. Our house is 108 years old. Yes. So we have an old house. That means I have
I
old
love that. Old
trees
bones.
also. And it's been renovated. So we went through the same thing, and it shocked me, just the anxiety that I had going through the inspection, the amount of times that I asked the guy, of like, okay, be so for real with me. be, be like, are you don't be professional? Like, be so.
Break it
What do you
down.
this
Break it
house?
down.
Like just,
Yeah.
so even when he was writing up the report and the amount of time he was like, yes, I, as somebody who does this for a living and I have also done my home, they really did do a good job. So I'm like, okay, it looks beautiful, but like, is this fine? And my husband, kind of the way that his anxiety works and his process, it has still taken us living in the house for, so the smallest thing will go wrong and be like, did they do it wrong? Was it this? And it's like, oh no, we just didn't know how X, Y, and Z worked. It actually is fine. Everything's like, did we get a bad house? Was it wrong? Because buying an older home would have not been his
His
choice.
ideal. But
Would
that was
not.
y'all's happy medium, was a
Yes, it's our
renovated.
happy medium.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it has
Mm-hmm.
turned out to be like a perfect home.
I will say when they schedule inspections, do like Alyssa and go to them, see what's happening. Sometimes they will try to rush you through the process and be like, well, the
Mhm.
inspector can come Tuesday, even if you have work.
Yes.
But what happens is you don't get to do that. You don't get to
Yes.
be like,
You
no,
were,
but seriously.
I was in your business. I was up, had the flashlight while you were under the crawl space. Like,
Hmm.
okay, are you, we're probably obnoxious, but
We actually, there was one glaring error that they missed here,
oh wow.
but we give thanks and praise to our God because it was electrical and this man is an
You're
electrician.
like,
So he was able to fix the problem in like 10 minutes, but it was such a like negligent
mhm.
error that he was like, oh, they wanted us to call them to pay money to fix what they should have done
The first time
in the first place. So
in the first
if
place.
you're not handy, if your partner is not handy, please know you need vendors. You need people for things. You need
Yes.
your plumbing, you need HVAC, you need electricians. You need those people
Yeah.
in your back pocket because you're going to need those things. Things will go wrong even if, the buying process was all above board and they did it right. Things expire, things stop working. And there's no one to call.
There's no one, there's no landlord.
It's you, babe.
No.
You got to figure it out. We came home one time and there was a huge branch from like the oldest tree in the yard
Mhm.
covering our entire backyard. And do you know who broke that tree down? Me and the
I was
man.
thinking that was, yeah.
Chainsaws. He's
Yeah.
insane. But I don't regret it at all. I love the fact that we bought. I love the fact that we're building equity.
Yes.
But I also just I like having my own space. I'm not a communal girly. Like, I want to hang out, but I want to be able to go outside and not have to see anybody.
Not have to see anybody and to not have to share a wall. Like we
Mm-hmm.
had a townhouse before. And so
Mm.
there's nobody else. I'm really loud right now. You can listen to music. I'm not having to be, I don't share a driveway with anyone
Right.
else. I
Right.
can be in my space and it is mine, and so that and just feeling settled, like you said, the building equity, and it has helped me imagine a better future. And then it allows me not to make those excuses for myself of limiting things. I used to be like, oh, my, even in wanting to be a content creator, of like, oh, well, the lighting's not good in my kitchen, so that's why I haven't done food content. Of like, you got window, I can't sleep
Period.
anymore.
Period.
So it has challenged me to just level up in a lifestyle ways, and it's been really good for our relationship. It has forced us to have conflict, that forced us to have conversation that we would not have had before, going through this process of, okay, I really appreciate, because that was a big part for me. I am ED dyslexic, a neuro spicy girly over here. So a lot of just the paperwork was really hard for me, and I was not the point of contact. Because being a nanny, it made more sense, and Aaron actually had more, my husband actually has more flexibility to kind of be able to take a call for a second really quick than I do, because I'm like, I'm wiping a butt right now. Sorry, like I
Right.
can't,
Right.
I can't. And also my brain just doesn't process that way. So I, as appreciative as I was for all of the heavy lifting per se, or the ways that he helped, I realized, okay, well, when you're doing X, Y, and Z and then just telling me everything you did, I don't feel connected to this process. I feel like you are just talking to me. So it brought up kind of relational things and just kind of conflict. but that was so healthy and just conversations that we needed to have. And it taught me a lot about myself, the way that I process. And then again, it was a confidence of teaching values that aren't just the whose income is more or who wrote down this or who sent that email. It was, no, I found this house. I asked this question. I was in his business of like, is this right? Is this, or
Mm-hmm.
even kind of having the faith aspect or the experience of saying, like you said, that functionality process of, okay, I work in homes. This might be beautiful, but this doesn't make sense for our life. This will not work for us. So being able, it was helpful to learn the values that I bring. And so it was good for confidence and conversations that we had, but also the hard was good. It was good hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good. I feel like for us, because we chose to do it in secret, it was almost like, and I've never given birth, but you know how most moms wait a few months before announcing their pregnancy. That like time where you're going through stress and trauma and there's no one you can talk to but your partner,
Yeah.
you're forced to meet each other there and talk through things. And you learn so much about yourself because I was the most neurotic, like,
Yeah.
because I was the point of contact and because I did very strongly believe, like you said, we're Jesus girlies. I did very strongly believe that this was our house that God set
Yeah.
aside for us. I believe that this was the time that we were to buy it. We closed in 21, 28 days, something like
I
that.
think us too, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And we almost closing day, we closed in the title attorney's office, took the day off work. We were going to be cute like y'all.
Yeah.
You know how y'all had y'all picnic and stuff when y'all
Yes.
came back? We were trying to do that in the house on the day we closed. It did not happen because we didn't get our keys. Our meeting was at 10 a.m. We got our keys at 7:30 p.m. We sat in the office all day. Do you know why? Because the bank forgot to triple verify the man's employment. And it was either a holiday or someone was not in the office at his job that day. They had been the day before and they would be the next day. So then they wanted to not give us our keys to our home. And I was like, oh, no, you don't. So we actually ended up with him calling someone else at his job that was working, I guess, substituting for that position. And me having the bank on my phone, putting them both on speakerphone to talk to one another because both parties claimed they couldn't get in contact with the other in order to get the paper signed. Like it was crazy. We also got sued after we bought the house. That was fun too. That's the thing that can happen. Just make sure you have a good title attorney
Yeah.
because when your house gets renovated, sometimes the seller and the company that did the renovations don't agree
Mm.
on things. And what the company will do is place a lien on the home, including the seller and the new buyers, to get attention. We learned that. I mean, it was a non-issue. I called the title attorney. They wrapped it
Right.
up. It's
Take
included
yes.
in your home buying purchase, but it's scary to get an envelope that says you've been served, like lawsuit.
That part.
Terrifying.
And so I would advise anyone that's going into it, expect the hiccups. Like just know that it doesn't mean something's wrong. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It doesn't mean you're not capable. It just is a part of the process. Something will go wrong at some point in the process. For us, it was our closing. And now it's funny because at the time it was the biggest deal in the world and we were so upset and so frustrated. But now I can't even remember what the one thing,
The issue.
but one issue, what it was of why we couldn't close on that specific date. I know I remember seeing on the opposite side of a glass wall, our realtor, like, I was like, I don't know if he is saying to these people that he is mad that we can't sign today. And it ended up being like we ended up having to do it out of town and even like just yeah, so the whole process was really frustrating, and at the end it seemed like everything was going to go wrong. And then even when we had put in an offer at one house and then it not working out, it's just when you go into it knowing that that's part of the process, that can be really comforting. And so just know to expect it. I hope for everyone that it's smooth sailings, but I from anyone that I've talked to, that's just not how those things work. There is a hiccup somewhere because there's so many
Mhm.
moving parts and so many moving people. I feel like there's, yeah, paper's not going to get signed here. This, there, somebody's not quite doing their job. When there's that many moving parts, hiccups will,
Somebody's not doing their job is a thing that happens. And sometimes you have to be the go-between. You just have to, you got to be prepared to spend a lot of time on the phone.
Yeah.
That's all I could say. And honestly, you got to go into it with the like serenity prayer mindset.
Mhm.
There are some things that are within your control. It is firmly within your control to work on the books, to get W-2s, to have stable, well, it's mostly in your control, to keep stable employment for a long period of time, to know what your budget is, to have the liquid funds that you need. Those things are in your control. What is not in your control is all the other people who
Right.
have jobs to do.
Have
So
jobs
you
to do.
just got to be prepared and also understand that things are all up in the air until it happens, and then when it happens it's all of a sudden, and then now you have this house that you get to make a home
Yes.
however long that takes. I'm 5 years and counting. I'll let you know when we get there.
You get there, yes. That was what would did your process look like in making your house a home? What was one of the first things that you had to do? Like, okay, for my husband, it was like, okay, this TV needs to be hung because I gotta watch the TV. Those kind of things. Like,
Yeah.
what was your first space that you're like, okay, I gotta get this right for this to be my home or for this to be livable?
Weirdly enough, the first space that was important for us was the kitchen because we don't have like a pantry. We're like foodies that don't necessarily have a chef's kitchen.
Hmm.
So getting the kitchen together was like a really big deal. We cook at home a lot of the time. And when we first moved in, we just moved in what we had at the apartment, spread it out all around this house because we have a bit more space here, and just kind of looked, like spent time sitting on the floor, reading books, seeing what the light does at what time of
Yes.
day, and like figuring that stuff out was first. And then we spent a lot of money on new furniture and decor and stuff like that. But honestly, getting to know the home was
Mhm.
a a big part of it for me. And honestly, we couldn't really dive into making it a home because of the pandemic. So when we got ready to order furniture, everything was on back order for six
Yeah,
to eight months. Stores were closed. And we were both still working, unlike most people who were able to sit in their homes and have extra time. We didn't have any time. None.
I work. Yeah, same. We were both also working during the pandemic,
Wild,
but
wild time. A wild time.
a
But
while.
it's definitely a bit by bit
Hmm.
process. I like to think of my home in like pictures. So
Hmm.
like I've framed this space. Okay, I need everything in this frame to look how I want it to look. And then in 6 months I'll do another frame.
We went kind of room by room. And then, so I guess started the same way that you did, moved what we had from old place to this place, found out a lot of stuff that we had just did not work or make sense in the new place. And we have a whole living room set in our garage right now. It's like, it's still perfectly great stuff, but it just didn't fit, didn't work.
And that's okay.
Yes. And it is okay because it's just part of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And so we went through and we named everything, even from little stuff as far as decorations or things that were a necessity, or just like, okay, we have two more bathrooms than we used to have before. Okay, we need more towels. We need
Mm-hmm.
all the little things. So we went room by room, decided what we needed, and then I had three highlighters, and so whatever was in orange was like, okay, we need this by the end of the month. We need this by the end of the year, and this can wait. It kind of color coordinated, and we ordered, and some of it on credit cards. That is still stuff's get paid, whatever. And ordered what was on that priority of must haves, and then little by little have gone down. And there's still a lot of things that haven't gotten purchased, and it'll still come along, but that process was really helpful of organizing, like, okay, well, what do we need, what do we want, what has to be.
That was brilliant. We don't have meetings like that around here.
we
We need to.
we are family meeting time of people, but that's some of the neurodivergent, like, we are two people that speak completely different languages. It's funny, we by the end of all the conversation found out we want the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
but like,
Getting there. Yeah.
but the getting there part. And so it needs those family, we sit down and have our family meetings and the budget talks and the this, and yeah.
I love that. I love that. I want to be like you when I grow up.
want to be like you when I grow up. Are you kidding?
You're already miles ahead of me, friend. So
If you think that, then we have more catching up to do because you just don't know enough. Like, that's all that says to
we
me.
do have more catching up to do. Absolutely. Absolutely. But I do appreciate you coming through and talking to the people. Congratulations on being
Thank
a
you so much.
homeowner. I love watching your journey. Like I said, you're my favorite nanny influencer. And honestly, maybe the only one I acknowledge. I have to think about this harder, but there are not many of you in this world. So thank you for being here.
Also want to let you know that it was on, like, we do goal planning sheets, and so one of them is like social goals, and I put like, okay, I really do want to develop my local nanny community, and that is something that you and Carrie are two of the people that have really inspired me to do so, because seeing you know, the relationships that you have with your core local community, the amount of nannies that you get to hug, that was important. And then side note, it was like, okay, and then so I need to hug Amber. Like, there was like a couple of nannies that I was like, people that I was like, I need to hug them.
No,
I
I cannot wait.
friends, and yes, and so it is literally on. It is on goal sheets to like ring
So excited.
just Amber and like
Oh
in
my gosh.
of the nanny community that I want to build up. And so yes,
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for your friendship, but also your guidance and the solid presence that you have been in this community, just the staple that you are. Because again, like you said, you've been here since the Norman Nanny days, and like you've been in Annie's life, and so you have been just kind of a point that all of us. It's not because so much in like you said, there's not a ton of us anymore
Mhm.
doing this kind of. And again, we both do nanny influencing in our own way and our within our own niche, but just how staple and solid that you are. And I can be on any nanny stuff. I think the most reposted nanny is gonna be your
That's crazy.
has it's been important, and it's been a really grounding presence in our community. So I definitely appreciate that and the ways that you
Thank you, friend.
yeah.
I appreciate that. I literally just I need us to be seen and heard and acknowledged, and I don't think I will stop until we get to that place. I have so much to say.
Yes. And
So,
I love the way that you've taken that initiative to be to be the change you want to see in the world, but also just to be the presence that you want to see of. I would love to see more Black nannies.
please, y'all.
I need to know this. So then I need to be out here doing it.
Most stuff.
So I
Most
do
stuff.
appreciate the presence that you are in our community for sure.
Thank you, friend. You're the best.
Right back
And
at you,
thank
sis.
you guys for tuning into another episode of A Nanny's Life podcast. I'm so grateful that you join us and listen through. I hope you got some inspiration here if you are considering home ownership or on your journey, or if you have been through the journey. I hope you saw yourself in this episode represented. I hope you have a great week ahead. I hope you take really good care of yourself, friend. Please take care of yourself as well as, if not better than, all those other people in your life, okay? You absolutely deserve it. All right, I'll see y'all next time. Bye. The work is not the same no more. They lie. So let me share the truth on this platform that I got. Black nannies are the blueprint. Forget what else you thought.